thank you, Sharon, and thank you, Crete, for inviting us. It's a very pleasure for us to join this event and share our experiences. It was a long process, actually. By the way, my name is Gonca. I'm from MCAST, but EIT Urban Mobility Hub is actually led by an civil society organization,
which is called Project Eagle Foundation, and it's a foundation in the mobility sector that aims to promote sustainable mobility and try to change behaviors when it comes to adopting alternative modes of transportation.
And we have also...
And I'm Rafael Pasqualini from the Valletta Design Cluster, which is a community creative hub, an EU-funded community creative hub.
So actually we are the MCAST, the Valletta Design Cluster, and PAF. We are all together in this hub. We are facing the same climate diverse effects, but I think we are, if you compare Crete to Malta, Malta is in size, it's very small, and it's densely populated, and the population is growing every day. And the island is, well, it's not hard to experience once you first land in Malta. The traffic congestion is one of the main problems. So, and we have also, there's so much to tackle when it comes to air quality, the diverse effect of also cruise ships and tourism on the island, and so many other reasons, as the professor rightly explained. And Valletta was also part of Civitas Destinations project, and thanks to the project, there has been so many good improvements in the Grand Harbor region, but this needs to be, of course, needs uptake and a lot of support to be taken up by the public. So that's why we decided to, that there was this call, and now it was the time to bring everyone together, because this is not only a problem that a policymaker can tackle, so it requires a lot of contribution. It is not, and it cannot actually, the solving of this problem cannot be actually given to one entity, because at the end of the day, we need to work together. And so we have brought, we bring this quattro helix together. So academia, policy makers, and industry and civil society organizations. So maybe Camille can explain what we have done more on the stakeholder engagement, but also our vision is, I think Rafael is gonna talk about our vision and what we would like to achieve in the island.
So when we became like this EIT Urban Mobility Hub, we decided to join our three communities, because we could create because all of us, we had different skill sets. Being representing like the mobility sector, I was like PAF took care, I mean, we are taking care of the stakeholder engagement. Gonca from MCAST is more about like education, trying to find what skills are missing to improve like the mobility sector in Malta. And Rafael from the Valletta Design Cluster is like this innovation, like all this innovation community of change makers. So by combining all three expertise, we could really try to make a difference. And this is what we are trying to do with this EIT Urban Mobility Hub. So being part of the stakeholder engagement, so we started with, we trained to use like the system innovation tool set that have been developed by Climate Kick. And it's a simple methodology. So you have tools that you use, and like the first tools was like a map. So how we map our stakeholders. It was a trees where we trying to find to help us find different categories, and we trying to think of all the different stakeholders of the mobility systems. So we had like a quite comprehensive map, and then from this list, we're trying to map them from like what we thought would be like are the most important stakeholders, which one we really need to engage and be connected with them, which one we need to inform. And from that, I mean, when we had this map, we decided to find like of 20, was it like the most
40.
Okay, you know, you're right. It's like the key stakeholders. And we started to see like the one where we already had close relationship with them and the community, like the change makers and the like the move makers in the community, and we explain them what was our approach, what we wanted to say, and trying to help them to connect with more people in the community. And we also showed, and every time we're trying to be really transparent and explain what we wanted to do, or what was our approach, and if they could help us as well to communicate our approach to other stakeholders. And it's how we managed to, because we got like very close links with some change makers, we were able to talk to the Ministry of Transport, and it was easy to explain our approach. And since it was always transparent, and so we could get them on board, and we did it with our different communities from the academia, from the industry, and from the public sectors. We really started to talk with people who were like change makers in their own community to get access to bigger players. And what we're trying to do so then is to create a conversation with them and really try to bring them together to create trust, so they can share their projects, and we can really have this conversation where everyone are together, and they can start understanding each other, understand their point of view, where they're coming from, their project, so we can have an holistic understanding of the mobility sector and the national ecosystems in Malta. And so that was more like the approach for stakeholders, but we also have like an innovation approach to make it to uptake it to the next level, and I think Raphael will describe it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Kamil. Yeah, so one thing one might say is that, as Gonca said, there's an over-reliance on cars in Malta. And part of it is because there's a lack of integration, a lack of kind of coordination among many of the entities, right? So one thing that we saw as a primary objective of ours was to enhance communication in three ways. On the one hand, to enhance communication between the stakeholders that we identified. And we've been doing that through a series of stakeholder fora in which they get to kind of share what projects they're working on and what their kind of focus of interest is. We also want to enhance communication between the stakeholders and the end users, because typically these end users get kind of locked out of discussions because any critical feedback is often interpreted as some sort of an attack, or really there's a shortage of mechanisms to constructively integrate user experience. Yes, we want to enhance that communication. And lastly, we wanted to create a new avenue of communication between the local stakeholders and the European expertise that exists. So we are a branch of the EIT Urban Mobility Hub, and so there's all kinds of expertise happening, held by the people who operate that program, as well as the other hubs around Europe. So we wanted to create to create a connection to that, to unify the local stakeholders and also to inspire them and bring some best practices. Now, in terms of our approach for open innovation, I would say that there are three kind of main pillars to it. On the one hand, there's a human-centered approach. And again, that's about listening to the experience of the end users of mobility. And this is something that affects everyone, because everyone travels every day, right? And as much as the focus is almost always on private cars, the fact is there are many other forms of mobility that often get much less attention. So we wanted to really insist upon a broader view of mobility. So there's a human-centered approach. Secondly, there's a systems thinking approach. And again, that's about looking at many of these networks in combination. And then lastly, there's like an experimental approach with pilot projects and testing things out and listening for the feedback and using that feedback to incrementally improve the systems. So so far we've had a very positive response. Over the past stakeholder meetings, we've been kind of collecting maps and insight about the different transportation networks in Malta, as well as the kind of pain points that end users experience as they navigate through these systems. and also the potentials and the pleasures, because often people assume that transportation is like a necessary inconvenience that is to be minimized at all costs, when in fact, especially coming from a beautiful island like Malta, transportation could be an attraction in itself. You know, right now there's plans in place to develop a ferry that will hop around the perimeter of the island, and that will be a picturesque experience, but it will also be immensely practical because a lot of the towns are right along the waterfront, right? And in fact, one of the reasons why driving takes so long is because the harbors penetrate so deeply into the country, so you have to drive all the way around the water. So yeah, so what we've been doing is we've been gathering we've been collecting and consolidating maps of various networks that are part of the transportation systems in Malta. We've been collecting user insight into the pain points and the opportunities and potentials. And then the innovation challenge that we're giving people is to pitch some sort of an intervention that will somehow improve the experience of traveling to or from Valletta in some way. So we're especially encouraging coordination between different stakeholders. And we've been getting a really positive response. Speaking from the point of view of the Valletta Design Cluster, which is on the one hand, a community creative hub, and on the other hand, an urban living lab, we're interested not only in technical challenges of mobility, but also in the cultural challenge of trying to get people to tap into people's diverse fundamental needs, right? Like, for example, one idea that I think has some potential is in terms of carpooling. You know, if two people are traveling together to the same, say there are two workers who are traveling together, well, that is effectively a little meeting, right? And that has value in itself. Like, so basically, let's stop looking at mobility in very kind of, you know, just as this kind of necessary inconvenience, and start looking at ways to enrich the experience in different ways, to motivate people to spontaneously choose to diversify away from just a private car. Another thing that we've been doing is commissioning local designers to produce some kind of posters glamorizing diverse forms of mobility in Malta, because you can go by traditional boat, you can go by ferry, you can go by bicycle, you know, in the spirit of these old vintage travel posters. Again, trying to inspire people to move beyond just a private car. So it's been a really interesting experience so far. We're still quite early in the process, but things are looking good.
And one maybe important thing to mention, because I don't know if you are experiencing the same, but we also were experiencing here this silo mentality. So, okay, there has been so many stakeholder meetings, so many workshops and everything. However, we are there, but the sharing of stakeholders or working together was not in the culture. So everyone go back to their own silos. Or what we are trying to now bring is that change, actually. We are using dialogue as an action in itself, because there has to be more dialogue. We are not only stakeholders, we need to be friends, you know, we need to work together, really understand each other, and that's what we are actually doing. And sometimes we are also criticizing and looking at ourselves, oh, have we created another silo, you know, and we shouldn't be doing this. So always like communicating whatever the knowledge we are receiving, we are immediately sharing and trying to enhance this communication, but it's also building trust. And that is so much lacking in between stakeholders. The reason why is that because everybody thinks like, okay, they have their own KPIs, let's say, they have their own agendas, and they have their barriers as well. We need to really understand those barriers and then build around it actually a little bit. So the way this open innovation is also open communication as well among us. So that was actually a good feedback that we received after we launched our hub. And we are, as Camille said, we are really new, but we have a very ambitious activity plan. But most of them basically focused on the stakeholder and community engagement. So far we are not really looking for solutions, but we really would like to increase the capacities and skills of when it comes to urban mobility. We also would like to increase the engagement, but also foster the innovation community a little bit, because we definitely need them. Current solutions are not helping at all. So we ended up having more larger roads rather than bicycle lanes, let's say, because the demand is not there. So we really need to work hard all together. And
to coordinate efforts.
Yeah, coordinate efforts, and also coordinate between islands. So that's why we are so glad that we have started our connection, and I'm sure that it is going to grow further. And really, we have to act. I totally agree with your climate change view. We have to be so fast. There's no time to lose anymore. So yeah, we are in this together. Thank you so much, Sharon.